my name is Sofia. Today I'm going to be going over this Wwise project for this Tetris game, which covers a couple of different implementation methods and techniques that you can use in Wwise. First things first, I'm just going to do a quick overview of the gameplay states. So we have a main switch container which has a gameplay, menu, and a silent state, which I'll look at later. In our gameplay switch we have 3 stages. In stage 1, there's a switch container that has an intro and a main state. The intro is just silence, which you are about to hear right now. Then, when the shape lands, we trigger the main state and the music starts. Then there's also just a stage 2 and a stage 3, which I just showed. They each have single looping segments. And then we have the menu music playlist, which it has just an intro and a looping segment. Here are the transitions that I use between each state. They're pretty simple. For the states, they are drum fills, the one you just heard right there. And then for the menu music, it's just the stinger, which you heard earlier. Next, I'm going to look at this music segment, which is triggered each time you move a shape in stage 1, and it has individual drum sounds that are set up as subtracks, which are sequence step. So each sound plays right after the other in order. They're also set up as triggers to only play in stage 1 on each 8th note. In stage 2 and 3, there is a musical stinger rather than drums. I've set these up in a move, shape, actor mixer, and then there's a switch container for each movement type, which is land, move right, etc. And then each of these has a random container correlating to a chord. Each time the chord changes, the stinger changes with it, so it stays in the key and adapts to the music. I did this by creating a state group for the chords E and F sharp, and then triggered this by using a music event queue in the music segment that changes the state to either E or F sharp where the chord is. I've also got a random container that plays a little bird sound whenever you move a shape. When you land the shape for the first time, there's a stinger that plays only this once. I did this by creating a switch container, which is attached to a switch group called landed shapes. We'll only play in the beginning state, and then for the middle it will play silence. On this land shape event, I've got a number of landed shapes RTPC, which goes up by 1 relatively each time this event is called. Then I attach this RTPC to a landed shape switch, and then the beginning only happens on 0, and the middle only happens on 1. So after 1, only silence plays. You can see the beginning plays that stinger, and then middle plays nothing. I've also used MIDI in this project, which you can see I have multiple drum sounds which are correlated to individual MIDI notes. I use these in stage 2 and 3 on their own music tracks. On the menu screen, I have a blend track which plays nature ambiances. It's got a random container with animal one-shots and then 2 ambient bird tracks which loop. I've got 2 events, one which sets the blend container parameter to 50 and then the other sets it to 70. In the actual music segment, I use a music event queue that calls these events. The first one adds the animal one-shots, and then at the 70 mark, the more abundant ambient track is added in. When you clear a row, I have an LFO that gets triggered as well, but only in state 1. You can see that I've attached the unaffected music bus, which state 1 is routed to. In the clear row event, it calls another event, which triggers the LFO. This trigger LFO event basically brings the RTPC up of its depth up to 100 when it's called, and then after a delay of about 0.5 seconds, it turns it back down to 0, which stops the effect. Here's an RTPC that's attached to the unaffected music bus, which has the modulator attached to it. And then here is the RTPC on the modulator, which affects the depth. And it's attached to the RTPC called LFO effect, which 0 makes the depth 0, so it has no effect, and then 100 makes the depth higher, so it has an effect. And then I found that a frequency of about 500 worked best for me. And you can see the depth can't be changed since it's attached to the RTPC. I also have a slowed down effect in this project, which is called when you clear 4 rows at once, which is also called Tetris, and when you pause the game. I've got 2 different RTPCs for each, and they just have different interpolations. So this purple one is slower, and then the pink one is faster. Here is my clear row Tetris event, where you can see I called the RTPC. Basically, I changed the value to 25 right away, and then after a delay of about 0.7 seconds, I change it back to 0. The pause game event works pretty similarly. When you pause the game, it brings the value to 100 and puts on a low pass filter. Then the pause release event reverses these effects. When you clear a row, the land shape sound will be called at the same time and play on top of it. So here is the land shape sound, and then here's the clear row, which I've had 4 different variations of. To prevent this, I use sidechaining so that whenever the clear row sound plays, it will duck the land shape sound and you can no longer hear it. I've set up 2 buses, one for clear row and one for land shape. The clear row bus has a meter effect on it, which outputs to a game parameter called clear row RTPC, which is then called on the land piece bus, which affects the bus volume. So usually when you clear a row, you'd hear both sounds playing at the same time, but because of the sidechaining effect, the volume of the land shape stinger is sent to 0 by the signal of the clear row stinger. I also used sidechaining to create a kind of glitch effect with the drums. I did this in a pretty similar way, so I had to export all my drums separately and then I sent them to this drum bus which has a meter on it. In my GameSyncs tab, I created a state group which has an on and off state. Then I also have this drum gate parameter, which when I was setting this up, I had to make sure that the values correlated to the meter's values. So the minimum on the meter is -48, so I had to make that the minimum here, and the maximum is 0. And then I just set the default to -48 as well. So when the gated effect is off, I set the meter's release time to be 10 so that it has no effect. So to finish setting this up, I head over to the stage 3 loop, press play on that, and then back over on the stage 3 bus, I set it up to affect the bus volume, and then I attach that drum gate RTPC. You can see it moving there. And it's pretty helpful to test this out while the music is playing so I know where I want the volume to be 0, and I can hear the effect in real time as I'm changing it. And then the way that I trigger this is pretty similar to the other events I talked about earlier. In the clear row event, I set the gated effect state to on, and then I turn it back off after a delay of about 2 seconds in the same event. The last part of this project are the win and lose events. The silent state that I mentioned earlier is triggered as soon as you win or lose along with a stinger. The silent state plays to give some space until the main menu state is triggered after a delay of 6 seconds. Thank you for watching. My name is Sofia, and feel free to reach out with any questions or if you'd like to know anything more about the project.